My name is Gavin Evans, and this is my list ranking all of Mel Gibson's directed movies from worst to best. And this list, for the most part, was pretty easy to come up with the exception of the number 2 movie and number 3 movie that kept swapping back and forth a few times. I'm very confident here. But watching so many of Mel Gibson's directed movies, you come to realize certain similarities. Like, he definitely loves Jesus imagery. Of course, you've got Passion of the Christ, but you've also got the ending of Braveheart and Apocalypto with everyone marching towards the Mayan temples. They also all deal with honor and convictions and standing firm in your beliefs while the world beats you over. They also highlight the fact that humans are very judgmental, they are sinful beings in the past and present. So just watching them so close to each other, you do start to see certain similarities. And I do think he's actually pretty underrated as a director. I would love to see him direct more, but let's begin the list with his worst movie. And it's the only movie of his I didn't like, and it's Passion of the Christ. This is the season finale to a show I didn't watch. The main story isn't built up to at all, and it's completely reliant on you knowing this story ahead of time. There's just no sense of story or characters here, and because of that, when the brutality kicks in, it doesn't have anywhere near the amount of weight it should, because you just don't know who this person is. You just don't care. They haven't been established. It's also way too long. It feels like a good 30 minutes, it felt like. Well, Jesus is just walking through the city. He falls over for a few minutes. He gets back up, and then he walks, falls over again, and it happens time and time again. It's just like this just feels so repetitive. And then we eventually get to the point where he dies, and then he comes back to life, and the movie ends. And it just kind of feels like, what was the point of that? It feels like if you wanted to see the movie where Jesus dies on the cross, then you'll get that and nothing else. Like, that is all this movie is. I know that's the story I signed up for, but still, there's just no other point to this movie than just having visuals of the famous story. And also, all the Satan and demonic stuff I didn't feel was needed. It felt really out of place here. So, yes, easily his worst movie. Now, his fourth best movie is The Man Without a Face. And this is one that nobody really talks about. Most people haven't seen. And it's a perfectly fine movie. It's one of those overly sentimental movies that came out in the 80s and 90s, and it just fits that mold perfectly. It's nothing new, it's nothing overly special, but while I was watching it, I was entertained. I definitely enjoyed the first 2 acts more than the last act. I do think the relationship that forms between him and his student is really well done. The performances are good for the most part. I thought the family drama was really well established. And there was lots of stuff I did like, but when I woke up the next morning, I'm like, what happened in that movie again? It doesn't have much staying power. My third favorite Mel Gibson directed movie, and I feel like this is going to be a hot take, and it's a last second change to my list. And it's Braveheart. I understand most people have this in the very first spot, and I do love lots of this movie. But the reason why it's number 3 is that it's just too damn long. It could have been 2 hours and 10 minutes easily, and it would have been all the better for it. At almost 3 hours, it just drags too often, and there's not much rewatchability behind it because of that. Now, that said, it still tells a great story incredibly well. It's really well directed. The time period is captured perfectly. You've got Mel Gibson giving his best performance. Like, he breathes so much life and personality here. He's just so charismatic, and the rest of the cast is also really good. You've got yourself some great action, and the ending of this movie is just so powerful. So I really do love it. Oh, and the music by James Horner is just top notch. So I do love this movie. I just wish it was shorter. My second favorite movie of his is Apocalypto. Now, this is a movie of two halves. The first half sets up the characters and the story in the necessary emotional foundation, and it does so incredibly well. You do feel the weight of what's happening. It does have emotion to it. And the second half of this movie is just a non-stop chase scene through the jungle. You've got man against man, man against beast, man against nature, and it's just bloody awesome. It's brutal with some great usage of blood. It's tense, it's thrilling, it's exhilarating. It's just adrenaline fueled, and I love it. I also love the note this movie ends on. It's really well directed, and I think it actually does Predator better than Predator does Predator. So yeah, I really like this movie. I think it's one of the most underrated action movies ever, and that's why it's in second place. But my favorite movie of his is Hacksaw Ridge. I said it in my review, and I'll say it here. This is Mel Gibson's Magnum Opus. Not quite perfect, but just everything that he learned from being a director comes into play here. You've got the war action that you see in Braveheart. You've got the sentimentality from Man Without a Face. You've got the brutality of Passion of the Christ. And you've got the structure of Apocalypto to just deliver on this knockout. The character of Desmond Doss, I think in my review I actually said was, but it's Doss. He's such a well-defined character. You understand how he came to be the way that he is, not just through his beliefs, but also through his experiences and how they've shaped him. And just because of that, there's so much nuance to this movie, especially when there's these conversations about how other people ended up differently. And it doesn't look down on anyone else, because eventually they just come to understand each other and appreciate for what they each have to offer here. And I just love that element of this movie. I think the emotions really come through. I think the performances are all great. I think the action is just relentless, and it's brutal, intense. And it's just a very powerful movie that makes me want to be a better person. I think the themes are so well explored. I'm not even someone who likes war movies all that much, but this movie does impress me. It's just so well written and directed and acted, and it's Mel Gibson's best, so that's why it comes in at first place. But what is your ranking of Mel Gibson's directed movies from worst to best? Let me know in the comments down below. Make sure you like, comment, subscribe. Stay tuned for some more videos soon. And Gavin, out.